Are we gonna know or? We'll know that it's gonna be. Good evening, everyone. In the absence of the mayor tonight, I guess you're stuck with me. So would you please stand for a moment of silence? I. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilmember Byerly.
Here.
Councilmember Compton.
Here.
Councilmember Pritchard.
Here.
Councilmember Morris.
Yep.
Mayor Long.
Okay, approval of the minutes of the June 5th, 2023 regular meeting. Everybody had a chance to review that in the packet that was sent out. I recommend approval. A motion? Yeah. And a second. Questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Compton.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Pritchard.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Okay, public comment period is from residents and city taxpayers that's on or not on the agenda. Does anybody have a comment? Okay. Unfinished business. A, consideration of ordinance number 20, authorizing the issuance of the 2023 A and 2023 B notes. This is the second reading and adoption tonight.
You're on, okay.
Well, good evening, members of the council. I'm going to work from this document. I think you all have it. I guess there was some discussion of this at your first reading, but I have for you here tonight the summary of the proposals that we received for the financing for the water system improvement projects. It'll be a series A note amount of $2,324,000, and it'll be a series B note in the amount of $1,326,000. The distinction there is that the Series A note is what's referred to as the city-only projects, meaning the city will pay the debt service on that loan. And then the Series B is the Central Clinton County Water Filtration Authority, where that is shared with the authority and Suburban Lock Haven Authority. So that's really the distinction of why we have two separate notes. It'll be easier administratively as well for Greg kind of going forward and tracking who's paying which notes. Both of the notes we solicited were for a term of 20 years. Certainly the projects are very long useful life, so certainly appropriate. We went out to 33 banks and 5 banks responded, and we got 12 proposals for each of the notes from each of the banks. A summary of those appear on page 1. As is frankly customary, there are banks who gave you a fixed rate for the entire 20 years. In this case, again, it's not the best proposal. So while People's Bank offered you fixed rates of 5.07%, the best proposals you got are the highlighted ones below. For Series A note, it's from Kish Bank, a fixed rate of 4.27% for the first 7 years. The variable thereafter with a cap of 5.5%. So even if you assume worst case that you were at that 5.5% for those remaining 13 years, that blends to an all-in rate, worst case rate of 4.733% in the far right-hand column. The rest of the proposals are there. Clearly, this is the best proposal that offers you the lowest all-in interest rate. And then on the Series B note, Kish Bank again, they offered you a little bit lower rate on the Series B note of 4.23% for the same 7 years. The variable thereafter at the cap rate of 5.5%. Again, worst case, that blends to a rate of 4.716%. So honestly, not a lot of discussion here. I know sometimes we have some discussion about kind of what ifs, but these are clearly the best proposals that you got. Any questions on those? The rest of the pages are kind of all the numbers behind this. Page 2 is the sources and uses. So the Series A note will finance the city-only projects, being the Wellfield land and easement acquisitions, and the Zindel Park Bridge engineering and construction. And then the Series B note will permanently finance what was the 2022 B bond. That was an interim financing for the old project that could not be included in Penvest. And then there's another about $218,000 of old phase 1 contingency. The hope, fingers crossed, is you actually don't need that money, but we added it now. Obviously, economize on the costs. Last thing you want to do is do a $200,000 financing, a couple of months from now. Actually, this is money that the city set aside. So again, the hope would be that if the city did need to pay this for the project, you can then kind of reimburse yourself from this loan to not utilize your cash. Again, that's an open door for you to do kind of as you wish, because these loans are drawdown loans and prepayable at any time. So all the flexibility for the city. At the bottom, I tried to quickly, all the details behind this again, but I tried to quickly summarize that where the impact comes for these notes. Here in 2023, there'll be no payments on this loan, so there's no budgetary impact. Even in 2024, we're going to capitalize the interest, meaning pay the interest from the loan. So again, there's no budgetary impact in 2024. And then in 2025, you'll have the full budgetary impact. For the Series A note will be about $189,000. And for the Series B note, a full impact of about $333,000. That's actually a combination of some previous old Penvest loan as well, kind of stepping into that entire impact. Page 3 is the Series A. The larger box on the left-hand side is the full repayment schedule. With again, the full impact coming in 2025. Just to kind of pull this together, in column 9, I showed the existing city water debt. And in column 10 just puts together the new loan together with the existing loans. So column 10 is your resulting city water fund debt service. And 11 is just kind of show you again, what's the budgetary impact. So it's kind of a one-time increase of $189,000 and that pretty much stays there. So your debt service will be level, meaning no further increases year to year. And then lastly, on page 4 is the Series B with the same type of presentation. The larger box on the left-hand side is the total repayment schedule for the Series B note. Kind of real quickly there in the middle, columns 20 and 21, that's the allocation of this loan. So the city is expected to pay approximately 55% of this loan. And Suburban Lock Haven Water Authority will pay approximately 45%. So that's the allocation. I know the cash flows get a little.
It changes based on percent of total flow. So, depending on the draw of each party each year, it could go 56 to, 44, each other way around. A couple of years ago, it was 50-50. So it fluctuates with you.
But the intent of this was just to give you a kind of a quick snapshot or a good estimation of what it should be going forward. And then again, the column 23 is all the existing shared debt service, and 24 is the resulting coming in at a grand total of $529,000 a year, or the increase of $333,000. So, any questions on this? Very good. Yes.
Okay. So
Thank you,
I'll
Jim.
just give thanks, Sarah. I'll just give a brief introduction. My name is Jennifer Karen. I'm a bond attorney with Eckert Siemens. We've had the pleasure of historically serving as bond counsel to the city. And we're back again for this financing. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm here tonight to just briefly review the debt ordinance that is before you. We understand that the first reading occurred on June 5th. And so just to point out a few of the final changes that were made to the ordinance since the first reading were essentially just to update the final schedules to the ordinance to include the maximum debt service schedules. We relettered the final numbering of the schedules and also updated information to the final form of the notes that are at the schedules as well, just to get the ordinance in proper form for tonight's second reading and also the enactment of the ordinance. We did advertise in your local newspaper required by the Local Government Unit Debt Act. We did provide the legal notice to the paper. And that did appear in the paper. So we're ready to go for the enactment of the debt ordinance, and I'll just give a very brief summary, since Daryl, he always steals my thunder, but the ordinance authorizes the undertaking of the refunding project that Daryl described, and also the capital projects that are described in the ordinance. It authorizes the incurrence of both the Series A note and the Series B note. Again, as Daryl explained, the ordinance by itself does accept the loan proposal, so you don't need to take any separate action with respect to Kish's bank proposal. The ordinance takes care of that. The ordinance also appoints Kish Bank as your paying agent for the notes, so they'll handle the debt service payments once they receive the money from the city. The city's full faith credit and taxing power is pledged for the repayment of these notes ultimately. The ordinance also designates both of the notes as tax exempt bank qualified obligations under the Internal Revenue Code. It creates two project accounts, and as Daryl explained, these are both drawdown notes. So when you draw the project proceeds for the project, they will be deposited into the project accounts essentially for immediate expenditure. The authorization of the prepayment of the 2022 bond that's being refinanced is provided in this ordinance. And lastly, the ordinance permits the authorized officers of the city to take any appropriate action that's necessary to effectuate the closing on the notes. And that is scheduled to occur on July 19th. So assuming that the ordinance is enacted this evening, we will file the ordinance along with the other documents that we brought to, and we'll coordinate with Greg in terms of getting those signed and sealed. We'll file those with the Department of Community and Economic Development. They have 20 days to approve your debt proceedings. In the meantime, we as bond counsel will work with your financing team. We'll draft the closing documents, circulate them to the working group, and we will proceed to schedule a pre-closing before July 19th, which is the date that the actual funds will flow. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Or I'll just ask for a roll call vote of.
I have a question.
Yes,
Go ahead, Richard.
Do you have the ordinance in front of you?
yes, I do.
Could you read to me section 19C?
The whole paragraph.
Yes, please.
Okay. 19C says the city hereby creates a special account to be known as the City of Lock Haven 2023 Capital Project Account, known as the 2023 Capital Project Account for Series A, established in the name of the city with one or more banks or financial or investment institutions designated from time to time by the council of the city or otherwise as established by law as depositories of the 2023A Capital Project Account, each a 2023A Capital Project Account depository, subject to clearance or collection, monies, checks, drafts, notes, bills of exchange, acceptances, or other orders.
Let me stop you at that point. After depository close bracket, the rest of that sentence seems to me to be syntactically unmoored from the rest of the paragraph.
Right.
What do
So,
these?
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's describing the depository account and the obligations and sort of the exceptions to the depository relationship that's established with one of those institutions.
It may well be doing that, but I don't think syntactically it makes any sense. Because you've established this depository subject to clearance or collection, and then we go to monies, checks, and all the rest of it, and I've no idea what those monies, checks, and other forms of financial instrument have to do with the rest of the paragraph.
I think it's modifying that the depository with that account is subject to those types of those forms or instruments of payment coming in and out of the project account. This has been historical language with respect to these project accounts for many, many years in our documents. That
Well,
we have in there.
it wouldn't matter if it came from the second book of Samuel. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not going to belabor the point because I think everybody understands what the obligations are under that paragraph. But just if you've got nothing to do on the journey home, just ask yourself whether that sentence actually makes any sense. And the same is true for paragraph 20C. But let's not hold the matter up any further.
Okay, that's
Thank you for
noted.
your
Thank you.
observation,
Yes, thank
Councilman Moore. This is fairly, pretty much almost boilerplate, these couple sections that I can remember seeing something like this before and other notes that you had.
yes.
Are there any other questions? Entertain a motion for considerance of ordinance 2023-05.
So moved.
Properly moved in second. Any more questions? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yeah.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Any other unfinished business?
I have none.
Okay, new business. Consideration of proposal to lease portions of Petty Park.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Tracy Ellis and this is my husband, Robert Ellis. And we are coming before the council this evening to present an economical solution for Petty Park. In 2019, we heard that Petty Park was costing the city of Lock Haven over $15,000 a year to maintain. I'm sure with the inflation these days that everyone is seeing, the number of that has grown. And unfortunately, if you're not a resident, your access to the river is limited. If you are visiting the area, you can stay in one of the local hotels if there are rooms available. We find when the university has events or Penn State has games overflow, you might not always find a room available. You can always enjoy the river scenery on the river walk, which is beautiful, but there's no actual place to stay on the river. And there's no public camping on the river and at the river at all. We are hoping that we can work out a leasing agreement with possible option to buy with the city of Lock Haven and release the financial burden of maintaining the park and transforming Petty Park into an off-grid primitive campground with high-end glamping sites. This would not only be a huge improvement to the park, but it would also be a tremendous incentive to visit and stay at the park, thus bringing the city revenue. By complying with DCNR guidelines and preserving the park in all its glory, we would like to transform approximately 50 campsites and 10 glamping sites with future expansion to a wholesome campground experience for families to enjoy. The campground would be a campground like no other. Not only would we cater to experienced campers, we would provide a service for campers that might not have their own camping equipment. We would provide tent rentals and setups for certain sites and for campers who love the adventure of camping, but without the hassle of pitching a tent. A unique feature of the campground would include a canvas wall tents for glamping experience. Glamping has become a more popular way to camp. You have the adventure of camping, all the comforts of home. Glamping tents are non-permanent shelters and environmentally friendly. The campground would be open to the public for the camping season. We feel that this niche way of camping would attract a new generation of outdoor enthusiasts and could possibly be the host of many seasonal events for the community, such as wine festivals with local beer crafters, arts and crafts fairs. It could be accommodate the overflow of the campers from the Labor Day Regatta, possibly host the families of the teams for the Little League World Series. We would love to host archery and sportsman events for the public and the clubs in the area. And we'd also be expanding the accommodations to the area other than the 3 hotels in the vicinity. We would like to work very closely with the city of Lock Haven, SBDC, and DCNR to ensure that all community standards are in place and to make the campground a staple of the community. We also would like to work with the Lock Haven University for helping us hire the college students and local high schools as well in the area. And I would like to thank you for your time this evening and hope that you could see the vision that I presented tonight in the packets. We look forward to meeting every one of you and answering any questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions for that one? Presentation here that you made. The site map really helped a lot. because it still shows the two ball fields.
Oh, yeah, the ball field,
To make sure we keep that recreational
absolutely.
thing there and landing sites. I remember we had some years ago, we visited this in that 50 years time, and there was a list of columns and things that we had to do, and I looked for mine and I couldn't find it. So, do we need to reference that or go back and look at that anywhere? And
We've been using that as the guide, the administration as the guide in discussion with the LSC, which have been taking place with the Director of Public Works, I think maybe like director, really what being asked. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to say no as a group, then it wouldn't be worth continuing what the effort is. But if it is something that you're going to entertain, there are more steps that have to be taken, but those are sometimes time consuming.
So we would love to sit down with DCNR and discuss, you know, what needs to be done there. And I think because it's going to be more of like a primitive type campground, you know, they might not be too much of a footprint on the park as, you know, I mean, I know the bathrooms are an issue. That's something that we would have to address. But we're looking into things like that as far as the Clinton County has the revolving loan program. There's some grants out there that could be had. So there's something that we would, you know, would really like to try to go forward with.
it hasn't worked, but we should make a motion and vote, or are you just looking for a consensus? That to move ahead,
It would be good to
and not say no.
to vote to the recommendation from the Director of Community Life is for council to direct the city's administration to continue to explore the lease and review a draft of the lease agreement. And so we basically meet with them to get to that.
So there may be votes in year two, or
Yes,
this is just the motion to move ahead.
this is a motion directing the staff to,
If this is a possibility.
right? Because ultimately, like, if it came to fruition, then there's a lease and you have to act on it.
Question?
As Steve and Greg both noted, I mean, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about an idea like this a couple of years ago. Went through the options at that time, research by Greg and staff, what is available, can it be sold? It can, but a lot of steps. Can it be leased? It can, less steps, probably very doable.
Mhm.
At that time, city staff was faced with, you know, some of the big projects that we're involved with now, and the time commitment, as Greg mentioned, you know, really wasn't warranted to move forward. Really excited that the Ellisons have brought this back to the forefront, because I think, as I mentioned a couple of years ago, and I think a couple of council members agreed to, Petty Park is a super underutilized property for the city. There's tremendous potential in it. This would be a great option or something similar to this. I'm 100% in favor of moving forward, but I also would like to throw in the idea that while the Ellisons have put together a great presentation, we probably need to look at an RFP to see, is there other interests out there? There may be, there may not be, but we probably as a city need to find that out. To find out if there are other people that are interested, that we can make a proposal. And then if so, who presents the best proposal for the city long term? But I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the city, and certainly would like to vote to move forward.
On the topic of the RFP, as Councilmember Byerly discussed, it is something the council has visited regularly over the past several years, although several people have come forward with inquiries about what they could do there. The Ellises are the first people to actually put together a presentation in many years. So they are the first to come and actually put together a map that business plan. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you're working with Penn State. Business
SB,
Development
yep, the
Center.
Business Development Center, yep, we're working with them and,
There are no secrets.
yeah. And, yeah, and we're putting together a business plan as well. but just wanted to get past this first.
Yeah.
Yep. First hurdle of many, I'm sure.
Well, I'd be more than interested, I think, in looking at a kind of a fully fleshed out proposal, providing I don't ever again have to see the term glamping. But I think there is a threshold issue, and it's this. The tenants normally expect to have exclusive right of quiet enjoyment of the property that they're leasing. The terms under which federal money was used to acquire Petty Park, I think, assumed that it would always be a public asset.
Mhm.
And I think potentially there is a conflict of proprietary interest there, because I don't see any way that you would be able to prevent Murray Park Kettle walking Rover all the way down to the water's edge, however you had structured that lease. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know whether that's an issue or not, but I think it's something that we ought to be clear of before we do too much additional work on fleshing out this proposal.
That is something that we actually have had a discussion with Wes from DCNR about in the past. And DCNR does have models that can be used to meet the criteria under the U.S. Department of the Interior and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, providing we're clear on that, I have no further objections.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson. Councilmember Moore.
Does that mean yes?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much. Consideration of the appointment of a subcommittee, 3 members, to review the water rate study draft.
Ralph Ellis, which was hired by the city to make a draft of a rather complex water rate study that will show the next 10 years of payment rates required to meet the debt service and general operation. Department has been for, so would like to request the council to appoint 3 members of the subcommittee, work with me and members of the Department of Public Works to work on that draft and try to get it to a point where it would be presentable for council. On that note, I will mention Councilmember Mazzordi said she would throw her hat in, but that's up to the 5 people here. So
I would also like to be involved in that, but I would defer to any member of councils whose life on the council is longer than mine.
I guess we have our 3 members,
is that Conklin, Mazzordi?
and Morris. Looks like that's, we need to vote on it.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion. Those 3 be appointed to review the water rate study. So moved. Second. I'll move in second. Any questions? Call for vote.
Councilmember Byerly.
Yes.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Notice of the request for reimbursement from the LHCA for Castanea tank maintenance.
This is for council's information. Last year in 2021, the city authority approved reimbursing the city of Lock Haven for the required exterior and interior maintenance of Castanea tank and pump. And so that work has been completed and the city authority has been requested to submit reimbursement.
No action on our part then.
Correct.
Notice to Suburban Lock Haven Water Authority, Region Sunset Ponds.
After recent visits from Suburban Lock Haven Water Authority's managers, the city's lawyer on the issue did draft this letter, which went out to Suburban on June 12th, just reminding them that they have until the third compliance. Back.
Now, there's FYI reports, maybe your, what's about the whole phase one updates.
The old phase one is coming on, left photos of the concrete, left concrete, sorry, at Rock. Which is. And that still is on track in September. And then there was an ad in the paper, Snow Steinberg and Faulkner are closing permanently. As you know, Louis Steinberg was city solicitor for many years. And so most of his files were transferred to Justin Hauser and Brian Hauser. Did send a letter to Alvin Stella, so here, he was solicitor for decades before Louis. So just to sure if they have anything to be on the lookout.
Anything else under FYI or report?
I have nothing.
Any other matters to come before council? Next meeting of city council will be July 10th, at 7 o'clock. City Hall. Montford, please stand and identify.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Jim Cooper. I maintain an aircraft here in the hangar. My question is, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the situation with the door for hangar one. My curiosity sort of piques my interest in that. Do you guys have a resolution for that situation yet? And if so, date when we could expect that to resolve?
We do not have a date yet. The city has to have an aviation engineer in order to replace the door, which is ultimately the solution. The city does have its share of that money, which is $250,000 on hand. The other half of the money comes from the Bureau of Aviation. So now that we have an engineer again, because ours basically left the firm he was with before, so that starts the whole process of doing an RFP over again. But now we have Nick on staff, well, on retainer. So Nick will be able to engineer the new door replacement. The problem with the current motor, of course, is we can't get any parts for it anymore. The city does have on staff an instrumentation tech who can actually build things from scratch, and even he can't fix the motor that's currently broken. But the replacement of the door is the ultimate. Between hangar one and two, the door replacements, $500,000 combined. And so basically $250,000. But we do plan on moving ahead with that project as expediently as we can. I do not have a date, but it is not a back burner. So
It's not a back burner?
now that we have an engineer,
Okay, gotcha.
when we have no engineer, we can't get anything from BOA.
But what piqued my question is, in the wintertime, most of the folks that have airplanes in here were able to handle the problem with muffs or heating elements that would heat up the oil cans and whatnot. But in the summertime, the lights on and the door up at 2 a.m. in the morning, nobody outside. We start to run into the issue of security and the equipment inside these airplanes. We're talking at least $500,000 in here in flying machines. And the stuff that's inside is very, very expensive and very saleable on the exactly what talk about.
Thank you for your concern, and I'm glad we're moving ahead with it. It's been something that we've been wanting to fix and get done for quite some time. We're getting there. So
You see us running into next winter with this problem?
That would depend on the length of time to get the doors. Would be fine. Yes, over everything. But we can get back to everyone down here with a date once I have a conversation with Nick Barber, who's our engineer.
I think that would be appreciated by most of the aircraft owners in there, because the people start flying, get wild, and then nobody really knows what's going on. And it gets really out of hand, but if you could get back down to this FBO with that kind of information, I know it would be appreciated.
Yeah, and Doug's in the loop on all those meetings that we have, so always checking with Doug too, because
Okay.
he knows when the projects happen and will be occurring. We are getting the weather station upgraded, not an AWAS, but the one that we have will be getting upgraded.
Thank you.
Can I ask, I'm Steve Green, my tenure here. What happened to the ASOS or AWAS? Where did it go?
The AWAS,
Yeah.
as far as a new project,
Right.
so there's only one appropriate location at the airport, which is not on the airport property, so we don't have a location to put it.
You know, back to what Jim said, it would be nice if we get some communication, what kind of, I don't know, farthest east from City Hall or something. It doesn't seem to flow down here.
That was just something that I found out about at the end of last week. As far as the AWAS. So that's where we have shifted now to upgrade what we do have.
The digits.
Yeah,
So that's gonna be, because that didn't work for quite a while now. It's working right now, some.
So,
Okay,
but we're investing in the new software for that. That's about $4,000, and that's just city revenue. I don't believe we're getting any grant funds for that, but the engineer is already working on that.
okay. Communication would be nice.
We do have the 12-year project plan, which we put in the budget every year, and that's what we do with the FAA and BOA. That only changes once every year, but it has estimated dates on there of when things will get accomplished, but if you've ever looked at it, it's a 2-year time span. So it's not terribly helpful if you're looking for is it happening this year or next year, but we can definitely keep communication open.
We appreciate it.
Bill and
in the work.
yeah.
Any other comments? I would like to welcome all the guests, this week, this sentimental journey, to fly in. I hope the residents of the city and the county, what they have for a walk, flight, and look at the planes. I would hope that the pilots and the guests have a happy, safe, and a fun time here in Lockheed. Any other comments from council? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor stand up. Those opposed, stay seated.